By no fault of my own, I am currently without a desk in my studio. So that means that I'm going to take this stack of 2x4s here and make me one. If you're interested to find out how I'm going to do that, well then stick around. To be honest, on a project like this, a wood planer is going to be your best friend, because I'm going to want to plane all these on edge. We'll run them right through there all stood up. That way, when I join them side by side, they'll fit perfectly together, and they won't have the rounded edges of a typical 2x4. Now that everything's all squared off and perfectly smooth here on the edge of these boards, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay them side by side and join them all together. Something like this. And I'm going to do 3 at a time. There's a reason for that, and I'll show you that a little bit later. There's about 1,000,000 different ways you can do this. I'm using pocket screws. You could also use a biscuit joiner or something like that. I don't have a biscuit joiner. I've got pocket screws. So that's what I'm going to use. Maybe you don't have pocket screws and you've got a biscuit joiner. So maybe that's what you should use. Either way, anything will work. Before we join these together, let's spread a little glue down the edges. So I've got 9 boards here all joined together, as you can see. 3 boards per section, and I told you there was a reason for that. And the reason is, I'm going to run these through the planer again. Save myself a lot of sanding on the back end. And as you can see here, 3 boards fits perfectly in my planer. That'll mean when I'm completely done, I'll actually only have 2 joints that I'm going to need to sand. It'll all make sense here in just a couple seconds. So there you go. All 3 sections are perfectly planed out, and I've only got 1 joint here that's just slightly off. It's going to need a little bit more sanding. This one here actually sits together really, really flush. So that's nice. The rest of it will be just like glass. Anyway, that's the next step. Go ahead and join these boards together and we'll get everything sanded. So everything is completely put together at this point as far as the tabletop goes. You can see it is all one solid piece. Again, this section here is really super smooth. I like the way that that joint came together. This one's going to require just a little bit of sanding. I'll take the belt sander to that later, no big deal. I'll give you a quick look at the bottom here. You can see how all this went together. And eventually I will fill all of these holes in with some plugs. No big deal. I like using pocket screws like this. They really form a nice sturdy bond. So with the tabletop done, it's time to go on and mark the legs. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I hate measuring things. Measuring tape, pain in the ass, honestly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use a speed square, kind of mark off about where I want my legs to go. So slide it across like this, slide it across like this, and now I've got a nice intersection here. Hopefully you can see that. And that's where my legs will sit. And I'll just do that on each corner of the table here. That way I don't have to do any measuring and everything's going to be exactly the same. I'm not worried about hiding the screws on the edge here. So I'm just going to run them in from the outside. You can see I already did this end. Pretty simple. And again, this whole thing is just being made out of old scrap 2x4s from my old climbing wall. All the legs are now in place, or at least measured out where I want them to be. Everything's lined up. Now the only thing I have to do is go ahead and drill more pocket screw holes so that I can attach the legs to the tabletop. And I'm going to do that just like this. As you can see, I went ahead and drilled those pocket screw holes. I don't know, I got about 8 of them in here. That way I can drill straight into the tabletop and not have to worry about those coming through. Drilled one extra one there, not a big deal. that's it. I'm going to go ahead and get those screws in there, get those all attached, and I'll show you what this bad boy looks like. So this whole thing's together, as you can see. However, if you look, you'll notice I got a bunch of real sharp edges. All the corners are real sharp still. All these edges. I'm going to take all that off. I'm going to take a belt sander to this. I'm going to take out that seam in the middle there and take off all these hard corners and smooth everything out, round it all off, and hopefully it's going to look really nice when I'm done with it. Hopefully it'll be kind of aged look, like a typical farm table would look, something like that. That's the aesthetic I'm going for here. So here's the belt sander. Time to get to it. So right about now you're asking yourself, how smooth was he able to get that tabletop with that belt sander and the planer? Well, let's see. Perfectly smooth. Little ball here is not skipping at all. Everything turned out really, really nice. So at the end of the day here, I've got a perfectly good studio table that I can further customize to my liking. I'll probably put some metal rails on it, some little baskets, that kind of thing. That's the nice thing about making something like this yourself. You're not stuck with the design that you buy from a store. I can go ahead and bolt whatever I want to this or screw stuff into the sides if I want to. So that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this simple little project here today. I did, because now I've got a new table for my studio. So you know the drill. Thumbs up, like, follow us on Instagram if you want to, see what we're up to throughout the week between videos. 2 links at the end of this video for you to check out some of our other stuff, and maybe, just maybe, I'll see you on the next video. If you enjoy videos about the randomness of our amazing world, consider clicking on the globe to subscribe, or maybe checking out one of the other videos right here.